Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, how are you getting on? Welcome to a brand new Starfield video. So Bethesda have finally broken radio silence, and we've got a cool little Q&A here with Todd Howard that looks to be the first part of a series, so also cool. And they're talking about a number of features of the game today. So we've got stuff on starships, we've got a little bit on the background of the game, we've got some information about character traits, and a really cool look at the dialogue system, and I'm really hyped to get into this, so let's dive in. Okay, yeah, so this is coming from a new Constellation log thingy that Bethesda have done. So this has gone out first to people who are subscribed on the website to the sort of mailing list, basically. And it'll be popping up on Bethesda's YouTube channel fairly soon, so do have a watch out for that one. Should appear fairly soon. Basically, this is a 5-minute Q&A with Todd Howard, and it sounds like from the introduction that there will be a series of these in coming weeks and months. So that's really cool. Obviously, we've been working through radio silence recently. Since the game was delayed, they've not said a lot, which is not surprising. They probably had a fairly solid marketing plan in place, which then got promptly torpedoed by delaying the launch, so it is what it is. Definitely rather have them delay it than push it out early, but nonetheless, that means their plans have to change, and that's probably why we've had some radio silence. I'm guessing from the timing of this, they've maybe got a much clearer idea now of when the actual release date will be. As to what it might be, who knows, but very, very cool to get the vibe that they're probably getting a lot closer and have got things in mind. It also sounds like they're continuing to add lots of cool stuff to the game even at this point, so it's looking like it might be pretty awesome. So, first up, what are they talking about? Well, they did a little bit of background stuff, so we know that the basic style of it is NASA punk, and they're talking about it being a hard sci-fi, so they're a bit kind of is it, isn't it about that, but basically what Todd Howard is saying is, in his head, kinda yeah. The idea being that you can sort of follow a line, at least particularly visually, from the way we are currently exploring space in reality now to what you'll see in Starfield. So obviously it's a video game, things have to change to make it fun as a video game, but they've basically traced the line along sort of what we know, what we think and speculate about future space exploration. Obviously, we're a long way from doing it in reality, but there are theories out there, which we'll be touching on again in a minute. And it's going to kind of follow that line, both visually and technologically, kinda. And that's giving it a lot of its style and its inspiration. So we kind of knew this already, but it's also quite cool. There's a little hint in here that explains some stuff around the ship that's very cool. So speaking of your spaceship, the cool theory that they're talking about here is to do with how you travel larger distances, grav-jumping, and using the ship's grav drive, which is basically what we're going to be using to travel between solar systems, as opposed to between planets within a solar system. So they're calling it grav drive in Starfield. You'll activate this, and depending on how you've got it set up, because we know you can customize your ship and it will affect its performance, depending on how you've got that set up, it will affect the distance you can jump. So one of the cool things they were talking about was the fuel thing. How does fuel work? How does it play into the game? Initially, and up until quite recently actually, from the tone of things, your ship could run out of fuel. That is no longer the case. The problem they ran into, and this is the sort of thing anybody who's played something like, say, Elite Dangerous might be familiar with, if you run out of fuel, you kind of hit a brick wall and you can't go anywhere. What the solution to that they were originally working on it was, I have no idea, they haven't mentioned it here, but obviously running out of fuel in the depths of space is somewhat problematic. And from a gameplay fun standpoint, not that much fun, so they've tweaked that so your ship can no longer run out of fuel, so when it launches it won't be able to run out of fuel. The upshot of that is that the amount of fuel your ship has, instead of running out, now just limits how far you can jump. So obviously, one solar system might be further away than another. You might not be able to jump to the further one, but you might be able to jump to a closer one, so you might have to hopscotch your way up to where you want to be. We actually saw a little bit of that in the footage back in June, so I'm guessing earlier in the summer, earlier this year is when this change got made. But that's quite interesting. It basically means that you're not going to get stuck floating in space, unable to go anywhere, but it might limit how far you can go until you upgrade your ship. Or at least how swiftly you can do it. If you want to travel further, it'll take you longer. That's cool. That's a good balance, I think, and interesting to know about. So one of the cool things that is the NASA punk, the hard sci-fi stuff that he was talking about around here was the way the grav drive works. It was somewhat implied here rather than a deep dive, but basically there are a couple of theories out there in the real world right now regarding how we might potentially, theoretically, maybe be able to get past the issues surrounding faster-than-light travel. Short version is that due to relativity, time effectively slows down as you approach the speed of light, so a journey that takes you 10 years in the spaceship might actually take 1,000 years to people on Earth, which is somewhat problematic if you want to there and back again. So one of the theories around this is actually warp drive, for those Star Trek fans out there. Basically the way it works is what Todd Howard is implying here as to how the gravity drive in Starfield will work. Basically the idea is you compress the space in front of your ship whilst extending out the space behind your ship so that your ship basically doesn't move, but space moves around it. There are theories as to how that might be done. They have some major problems. They're basically mathematical theories at the moment rather than actual physics theories. I know there doesn't seem to be a lot of difference, but there is. So how such a thing might be doable is we have no idea, but that's the idea. So you move the space, not your ship, by kind of shrinking it and moving it out again, kind of concertina style. And that is the premise on which the grav drive works, which is very, very interesting. Obviously, it'll be Starfieldified a little bit and changed a little bit, but that's basically the idea. It's really cool that is the foundation of it, that is based in reality, so I find that really interesting, really cool, and yeah, interesting to know a bit more about the ship. So, let's have a talk about the person who is inside the ship, i.e. your character. So not a great deal of a deep dive in here, but it's responding to specific queries, possibly via Reddit and Discord and other places. So this is talking about personality traits. So we saw those in the summer. You can choose from a range of traits if you want. I don't think you have to choose one. I think it's optional. That will give you an advantage and a disadvantage. So you might have your own starter home, for example. You might own a small home somewhere, but that home comes with a mortgage that you've got to pay off. Stuff like that, so pros and cons. However, there's a really cool feature in here that Todd Howard was talking about that it basically means if you don't like what you've done and the trait you've chosen, you don't have to start a new character to get rid of it. You will be able to, through an in-game quest system type thing, which I would assume will vary based on the trait you've got. That would make sense. It wasn't specific on that, but yeah, obviously not giving away too much before it launches. If you've got a trait and you decide later on that the drawbacks or the style or whatever just don't go with what you want and you don't like it, you will be able to go through an in-game quest line and basically clear that trait from your character and get rid of it. From the tone of it and from the way he's expressed it here, it sounds like the whole trait will go, not just the bad bit, but the good bit as well. So you'll lose the whole character-defining trait. To use the example again of somebody who starts out with a start home, you'll lose the mortgage, but from the sound of things, you'll also be selling the house. So, that sort of thing, you know? Yeah, that gives you a really cool way in-game to get rid of something that you might not be a fan of and move on with your character without having to start over, which is a cool idea, and it's nice. There's quite a few bits and pieces in here that are structured into the game like this, and we'll be talking about the next one in just a sec, that allow for that sort of thing. They're geared towards in-game solutions to problems and keeping it as immersive as possible, which obviously it's something Bethesda have worked on with their RPGs over the years, making them more and more immersive and trying to bring you into the world, and once again they're doing it here, which is cool. Speaking of, nice little segue into the dialogue system, which is obviously one of the most either immersive or unimmersive, depending on whether or not they do it well, systems in the game. This looks really cool. So Todd Howard's talked here about in particular, the Persuasion system. So one of the things he's mentioned, we knew already that Starfield is the biggest game that Bethesda have ever made, or Bethesda Game Studios, to be specific. It's much larger than their previous ones, like Skyrim or Fallout 4. The dialogue lines they've talked about, apparently they're still adding dialogue to the game, which is cool. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's really interesting. They are currently at in excess of 250,000 lines of dialogue. Exactly what a line constitutes, the definition of that is open-ended. It could be a series of sentences, or it could just be individual sentences. I don't know. But either way, they're comparing that to Skyrim and to Fallout 4. And Skyrim had tens of thousands. Fallout 4 had just over 100,000 lines of dialogue. Starfield is currently sitting at in excess of 250,000 lines of dialogue, and still growing, so there is going to be a hell of a lot to dive into there, which is not surprising given the scale of it. I mean, Games, they're inevitably going to get bigger. Creative arts tend to do that, you know. Movies, the sequel tries to top the original, and then any subsequent ones try and go bigger and bigger. Games do the same thing, as I'm sure we are well aware, so it's not really surprising that as Starfield gets bigger and goes out into space, which is obviously going to be massive anyway, that in order to do as much as possible to bring that to life, especially in the areas it's going to be focused on, that you'd have a lot more dialogue. And yeah, more than 2.5 times as much so far, so that's huge and really, really cool. So this dialogue system is geared towards being deeper than previous ones as well, so that's really cool. They've kind of gone back towards more old-school Bethesda dialogue, which we sort of saw bits of back in June, but it's a list of conversation options you can choose from rather than closer to the Mass Effect Fallout 4 dialogue wheel. Because, yeah, a lot of people weren't into that, and more options are great. So, definitely ups your role-playing possibility. But the Persuasion system is a thing here that looks really interesting. Over the years, Bethesda have done a number of different approaches to that. The major Fallout system, obviously, has been... basically, you get a dialogue check, you pick the option that is to persuade the person, and if you've got high enough stats, you'll succeed, or have a better chance if you look at Fallout 3, or you will fail. Then you can look at, say, Oblivion, that had its really weird kind of wheel game, mini-game thing. Wasn't a fan personally, I know there are people out there who really were, but not the most immersive approach, and there have been other ones as well. With Starfield, they're leaning more towards the Fallout approach in that it's a dialogue check, but it's a bit more progressive and involved, and involves some really, really cool features. So, initially, you'll pick the Persuade option from your list of conversation options, and that will take you into a series of dialogue options that are Persuasion-centric. Basically, you select Persuade and go in, you've got a number of different options. It looks like there is a combination of factors going on here. So firstly, you can see at the bottom, you've got a turns option, and then you've got Persuasion and a few dotted lines next to it. And those dotted lines are the number of points you can spend to try and persuade from the look of things. So it looks like they've got a limit to the number of points you can use to persuade a person. If you run out of points, you're going to fail your persuasion, I would assume. The detail's not that clear on here, but that looks to be the case. So this character, it would appear, has 4 persuasion points to spend, and once you run out, you may fail, or if you can get through the persuasion conversation options without running out of points, it looks like you'll succeed. So you've got, from the look of it, 3 turns there and 4 persuasion points. So probably not going to be able to do them all. So this might be a challenging one to persuade, I'm guessing here. Also, this guy looks really, really cool. We can see also on the left, we've got a +1, a +3, a +4, a +5, and then colour-coded bars next to it. So I'm guessing, again, they haven't specified, but the colour coding will be the difficulty of the persuasion. Looking at that, you've got a +5, which I'm assuming is the points, looks to be, and only 4 persuasion slots at the bottom. So if you pick that one, you're probably going to fail straight off the bat because you haven't got enough points to cover it, which I think is probably why it's red. You've got 3 and 4 there, which are yellow, so more difficult, going to use more of your points. And then the top one, which is at +1, which is only going to use 1 point, and you've got the most chance of getting that one past them. From the sound of things, the conversation will continue afterwards. But that looks really cool. It kind of blends into the conversation system. It feels like an ongoing conversation to persuade somebody, which I'm liking the look of this. Obviously, your persuasive nature, or lack thereof, is going to factor into this in a big way through the points and the number of turns and the difficulty of. But at the same time, it's a conversation, not a just arbitrary, I've persuaded you with this extreme display of my eloquence. So I really like the look of this. Definitely looking interesting. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be pretty immersive. As I say, the fact it's going to continue on as a conversation looks really, really cool, and will have a nice flow to it, I think. And obviously, you're going to have to judge it and carefully pick what you say. Obviously, we look at some of the options here that are they're relatively conventional. You know, just a straight up obvious. You've got the wrong end of the stick. We're not treasure hunters vibe. All the way down to a more aggressive, threatening tone. But this guy, we can tell from his outfit, is a member of the Crimson Fleet Pirates, so he's probably not going to be easily intimidated by the threat of violence. So hence why that is more difficult. This guy seems to have lost an eye at some point and gaffer-taped his eye socket up on his helmet as a kind of makeshift eye patch, which is pretty badass. Very sci-fi space pirate version of a pirate, which is cool. But yeah, he's probably prone to violence anyway and not particularly intimidated by the threat of it, so it does make sense that'll be a harder persuasion option. It looks like it's going to be pretty cool. As I say, I'm liking the vibe off this. So, basically, that's everything that went over. It's a 5-minute video, so I've extended that quite a lot already by chitter-chattering and thinking about it, speculating and looking forward to it. As for release dates, obviously we haven't heard anything yet. My personal hunch is we probably won't until next year, but we'll have to wait and see. I imagine they've got a lot of marketing lined up already, so I suspect we'll start seeing the marketing machine spin up a number of months out from the launch date, so maybe we'll have a good little bit of a heads up before that, but interested to see when that's going to be. Be curious to see if they give us a trailer or anything at the Game Awards. Given that they've given us some information now, and the Game Awards is beginning of December, it seems more likely now that they've started slowly spinning up the marketing machine. This looks like it's a recently created thing, this particular Q&A, and a new series of it as well, so I'm guessing they've rejigged things a little bit, so speculation's a bit difficult, but very much looking forward to seeing more, hearing more, and so on and so forth, especially, personally, on the outpost building system, which we know almost nothing about at the moment, and I'm desperate to find out more about. But yeah, really liking the look of this. It looks really cool and immersive. I really like the starship working in a way that's grounded in modern theories, or the cutting edge of modern space travel theories, so that's really, really cool as well. Being able to change things like your character's traits and personality options and sort of have your character evolve as you play through the game without having to just wipe the character and start again is really, really cool as well. Obviously, have multiple characters and saves if you want and play different types of characters, that also makes sense. But the fact your character can evolve and you can remove traits you don't like just by playing the game as opposed to having to start again, I like a lot as well. And as I say, this dialogue system looks really cool and immersive and I'm entirely there for it, so very, very hyped for this. So, enough of me rambling. I hope you guys found this interesting and informative and are as excited for Starfield as I am. Obviously, I'll be continuing to cover and bring any news that is coming out as and when we get it. Because, yeah, as I've said before, Starfield, sci-fi plus Bethesda, that's me down to a T, and I'm really, really hyped and looking forward to this one. So it's going to be a massive thing next year when we finally get our hands on this. So, if you're interested, likes and subs very, very much appreciated. Notification bell if you want to catch my uploads, do appreciate that. Obviously, Fallout is also the ongoing thing. Very much enjoying that as well at the moment, so do check out some of the content over there if you haven't. If you get a chance, join us for live streams as well. Of course, we're playing Fallout. We're playing a little bit of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands at the moment as well. And when Starfield comes out, we'll definitely be streaming the living daylights out of that too. So do check those out if you are interested as well. And while you're checking out the buttons down there, do check out channel memberships, social media links, all that good stuff down below the video as well. It really helps out. So massive thank you to everybody who has done that. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.